I feel bad for the kids whose mom, like they're looking for mom and dad in the audience and they're not there. And for me to have my kids light up when we make eye contact at the Christmas concert or on the field or something like that, just to have that flexibility, no matter how much money I make, that I'm able to be there is probably the best. Mortgages aren't isn't the sexiest job in the world. I do well on it and allows me to invest in other things and do things, but the flexibility it gives me as a business owner is the most important thing around this stuff.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am stoked to talk to Dennis Callan. Really looking forward to chatting with him. He's in the mortgage industry, which I'm sure we'll talk about, especially considering where we're at right now with rates and how everything's been going. So that'll be fun to dig into the business side of that. But if you can, Dennis, please go ahead and introduce yourself, your family, and tell us about your business.
Dude, Adam, thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here. Dennis Callan. Born and raised in the Philadelphia suburbs. I've got 3 kids of my own, divorced probably 9 years ago now. I think it's what it is. And then girlfriend and her 2 kids just moved in officially last week. Been together 2 years. And so we're rolling 7 now from ages 15 to 5.
Nice.
It's pretty crazy. So mine are the older 3 and she's got 2 younger ones. And it's been pretty great. As you mentioned, in the mortgage business, doing that all my life. I own a brokerage here outside the Philadelphia area, and then do some real estate investing. I have a bunch of single family homes in the area and a couple duplexes, and then going to settle on my first larger multifamily 8 units here in the next hopefully month. So excited about that.
That's awesome. I love that size. I say that I love that size of property. All I've bought is larger properties. My smallest was a 62 unit apartment. And that was my very first property as well. And then I realized that I don't really like dealing with investors that are not like friends, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't like sending investor emails and all the stuff. So like, I kind of feel like I want to be in that like 8 to 30 range, right? To have the 8 units to 30 unit range that's small enough to be able to take down with you and a partner or 2, but big enough to keep that economies of scale going and not have to worry about all the other stuff. So I'd love to chat with you a little bit about how that deal went and what made you decide to go that route. But before we do,
talk next year. We'll talk. Oh, how much I might
see what your thoughts are. It's they tend to be especially if you're buying one that needs a lot of work or if there's something else going on there, then it tends to be a process. So you said basically all of your adult life you've been a mortgage officer. Let's start kind of back before that on what led you to get to there. So I kind of want to walk through maybe your relationship with your parents growing up. Tell me a little bit about who your parents were, what you learned from them, what you learned to do, what you learned not to do, that type of stuff. One of the things I really like to emphasize is the more we understand our parents, especially our dads, since we're men and we tend to go kind of use that father figure if they're around, or even if they're not around, as a basis for kind of who we are. So the more we learn about our parents and can understand who they are. So just kind of want to walk down memory lane with you to learn a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and who your parents are.
My parents were, my dad was a controller at a local hospital. He had that job for his whole career. It's crazy. Got the watch, got a ring for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay.
And he was 9 to 5 there and cut out Thursdays and played golf every Thursday, a couple times on the weekend. And then my mom was a kindergarten teacher in Philadelphia. My mom's from Puerto Rico. So she's worked in the city of Philadelphia in the Badlands with underprivileged families in the kindergarten. And it was crazy back then. She saw some crazy stuff, would bring kids home on the weekends whose parents didn't show up. Like that would fly today and still friendly and take care of and very involved with some of those families and the kids that she stayed in touch with. So pretty cool. My dad, I feel like dads these days are much different than dads at that time. The dad who came home, put their feet up on the recliner and took a nap and weren't really at the kitchen table for dinner. And the moms took care of all the cleaning and things like that. So I feel like that's a big drastic change from me and my dad. Great dad, totally involved. It was at the sports games, everything like that. But it was kind of, I feel like the duties back then were very cut and dry.
Yeah.
How you take care of the cooking and cleaning. I'll bring in the income even though you're working. So it was something a little bit different than what I was used to and what I think we're all as dads demanded from these days.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a different world, a different environment. Whether one is good or one is bad doesn't really matter one way or another. I think whatever works for the couple, but yeah, it's definitely a different world. What would you say? You said that your dad was at sports games and stuff like that. What would you say were some of the biggest things that you loved and really wanted to pull from what your dad did as you were then becoming a father?
Dad was just a steady Eddie guy. Right. He never got too high, never got too low. And I think that's a characteristic that I am. He let us be boys. He was never kind of in our fate. I don't really remember him getting too angry or too upset. Like, obviously you have to sit down conversations in the times where you're disappointed or didn't do what you're supposed to. But I think my mom was more the emotional one. My dad was kind of just steady, kind of right there whenever you needed it, slap you around if you needed to be checked. But yeah, sure. The most part is kind of, I take that from my dad where I'm not too extreme. If there's a punishment and like, oh, you're grounded for a week, it's just like, hey, let's figure this out. If it's something that you're going to lose your phone for a day or something like that, I totally get it, but it's never the extreme punishments.
Okay. Yeah, there's still today, you'll see some extreme punishments. Like, I don't know, sometimes you just walk through the mall and I'm shocked by what I see. And I'm like, if this is what you do in public, I can't imagine what happens inside your house. Like, whoa, boy, it's mind boggling to me. But there was something that was, go ahead.
Go ahead. But that's a thing that I think actually from my mom that I picked up as being a kindergarten teacher. I feel like I've learned a lot from her of how to discipline and things like that. And I tell friends, my friends with newborn and like younger kids, it's just like the 2 points that she always told me was like, never paint yourself in a corner, never be like the person who says, hey, if you don't do this, like if you're at a party or something and you don't want to leave, but Jimmy, if you do this again, we're leaving. And of course you're not going to leave, but now you just break that shut. Like, so something like that. And then you always have to follow through, because if you don't, then that what you're saying is the kids aren't going to have any respect for that. So those are 2 points that my mom always said, and I feel like my parents led by. And I was like, okay, well, what they say goes, and there's no negotiating. It's just straight to that. You got to do what they say. And so that was something that, we see a lot of parents do that. And I think you cause issues down the road that I kind of try to implement and get around right now.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely chatted with my wife a lot about, was like sticking to our word. If we say something to the boys, and now my daughter, she doesn't understand anything, she's 1, but when we say something to the kids, it is like, that's what we're doing, right? I mean, I'm not, it is extremely rare that I change my mind on something. And it's even if externally I'm like, man, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't say that. It's one of those that like, well, we're executing the plan because this is what it needs to be. This is where my word means what my word means. So there have been a few times though where I've kind of, stepped in and been like, all right, well, Daddy may have reacted a little emotionally on this, or I may have overdone something on this, and have that conversation and say, I'm going to adjust. You guys know that this is not something I do lightly. I am going to adjust what I'm doing. And the boys know. They're like, yeah, no, Dad said this. So this is what's happening. They've gotten that down, because that is one thing that I was like, I hated the thought that, now mine says trying to reconnect internet. Hopefully I stay connected. We'll see. There's like, even when it came down to like Santa Claus, like we didn't talk to our kids about Santa Claus at all, or we told our kids there was no Santa Claus from the beginning, because I was like, I don't want to be the one that's lying to my kids about something, right? And it's like, I don't want to start this off with this lie for the first 5 years or however many years of their life, that there's this Santa Claus, this fake thing, and all these things. So I almost took it to an extreme on that level. So just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on that? What did you guys do?
That's interesting, because church friends of ours did that, and I hadn't never heard of that before, and I always wondered. And so you're probably the second or third person who's mentioned that. And no, yeah, we're all in, and if it's a little white lie, I think for the good of it, I think we were okay with it. But it wasn't something that I we just try not to go overboard with that kind of stuff. So do you do presents and everything over Christmas?
Oh yeah, we do presents and everything, and we'll still write that some of them are from Santa just to have fun with it, and and still enjoy in that fun. But we don't tell them that there's actually a Santa or anything. And it's been tough though since we moved here to Florida because we're right next to my wife's brother. So the cousins hang out all the time. They believe in Santa. Well, my kids don't, right? So like there was some battling back and forth there for a little while. I was like, because I always told my kids like, you can't tell other kids there is no Santa. They're still in a different world than you are, right? Like, don't tell other kids there is no Santa. That's for between them and their parents to figure that part out. You keep your mouth shut. But I also tell them to tell the truth all the time. So like, there was this like back and forth about my son was like, "Why don't you believe me? There's no such thing as Santa." And my sister-in-law was like, "Yes, there is, Rourke." Yes.
Yeah.
So
I was definitely, and then when all that comes down from my kids, you can't ruin it for the next one. You can't ruin it for the next one. Now, if they wanted to ruin the Elf on the Shelf, I wouldn't be upset by that, but that piece of totally get out of my house, and you're lucky you're not so offensive. The Elf on the Shelf is nuts.
Yeah, we don't do the Elf on the Shelf. I've thought about it, and I've seen other people do it, and it seems like it'd be a lot of fun, but I just haven't. I feel like also it would be an exhausting thing. Like I've got to figure out another thing for this daggum elf to get into like chaos in my house. Son of a gun! Like I don't. But
well, my schedule of only having kids half the time, I can go hard the days that I have them, and then
there you go.
Have to be for a month and a half thinking of creative things to make them lambs. But now I got two young ones in the mix here, and we're gonna have to be full. Now she said she's bringing her elves, so now we're gonna have 3 elves in my house.
So that's gonna be lots of elves running around. What's up, little dude? I forgot to warn you before we started recording. I almost always been a visitor.
Yeah.
How about
You lift those weapons.
Those weapons that you...
Oh, yes.
We'll have to figure out how to get those back, right? Can I finish my call? We'll get to about your weapons later. Yep, there we go. So yesterday, I've been having some conversations with my oldest about controlling his actions, right? He's 9 years old, and as with every 9-year-old boy, there's a problem sometimes controlling actions. And one day he borderline on purpose shot his little brother in the face with the Nerf gun. And I had just got done chatting with him about how that's like, you could like, I've got videos of it from when they're real little. And like at 3 years old, you'd ask Adam, like, where do you shoot? Center mass, daddy. Like, I mean, I used to carry a gun for a living. I was a federal agent for a while and doing a bunch of stuff. So it was like, hey, like center mass is where you shoot, right? So he knows that. And then, he was getting a little too excited about some of the stuff. And then he ended up purposely shooting his brother in the face with it. And then, like, we had these Nerf guns ready to give to him. And he was like, hey, I want those Nerf guns. And I was like, hey, buddy, like, you're not getting them because you've proven that you can't manage those other ones. So you need to show me you're responsible with the ones that you already have before I'm going to bring more into the mix. And then yesterday, there was an incident. I'm sitting in here and I hear the 5-year-old, the one that just showed up, Rourke. I heard him scream in pain, and I go outside and the 9-year-old's like, I really need to do a better job controlling my actions. And I was like, well, and I see this like this little ninja ice pick thing on the floor. And I said, let me guess. You threw the ninja ice pick at your brother and it spiked off the top of his head and now he's hurt. Oh, yeah, that's what happened. And I was like, all right, well, this is what you're going to do is you're going to go into the playroom and you're going to get every single toy that could possibly be a weapon and you're going to put it in this bin and you're going to remove it from the playroom. You can't be trusted with toys that are weapons anymore. And so that's why, like, now Rourke, the 5-year-old, is like, I got hit in the head and I can't touch the toys that are weapons. What the heck? Like, he's getting doubly punished for it. But when I told him, like, I recently heard this thing that was like, hey, your kid probably, like, your 9-year-old is not ready to jump on the tractor. I mean, this is a very country guy, obviously. He's not ready to jump on the tractor and go do the combine work out in the field. But he really wants to because he sees daddy do it and he really wants to. He's like, he may not be ready to go to the gun range and shoot the larger shotgun, but he really wants to. So, you explain the things to them to say, hey, the way that you show me that you're able to drive a tractor is by responsibly doing these other things that I have you doing, like responsibly riding your bicycle, responsibly doing these things, responsibly taking care of yourself, because you're showing me that you have a track record of responsibility before I decide to put you onto a tractor when you're ready for that. And that was kind of the realm with this, is like, you're not showing me a track record of what all of this stuff is, but I'm going to pause there and throw it back to you and kind of say, what are your thoughts on like how that worked through? Like, have you had any experiences kind of like that with your kiddos? How does that kind of go in your household?
Well, my kids are upset because of the combined family, we finished the basement and put some bedrooms down there, but it used to be a massive space where they had crazy gun battles that have two big taps. So now they like theater and they like the pool table and the other stuff we got for them down there, but they don't have the massive space to have their battles anymore. So we may have to take it outside. But yeah, no, I'm all about them experiencing. I forget that guy that works with names, but the guy, the English guy who just says, let your kids do dangerous things carefully. And it just, I was never a helicopter parent. I was just like, yep. And they're like, everyone's like, oh, he's at the top of the monkey bars. Yeah, I see him. He's good. Fine. Where's that? He's going to fall and get a bump and maybe a broke, but like, yeah, I'm not like all over them all the time. I want them to explore. I want them to kind of reach their limits and push themselves. So yeah, we do some cool, like, where we go to Lake George. Oh, we're jumping off some pretty high cliffs.
Nice.
Our parents, are you sure you wanted to go up there? And I'm like, as long as he's good with it, I'm not going to drag them all. So they're like, Dad, watch. And it was awesome. So yeah, I have no problem about letting my kids do stuff that are going to push their limits and let them kind of figure out what they're comfortable with. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I mean, it's, if they want to give it a whirl, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say yes. There are very few things that I'm not going to let them do. Right. They ride the dirt bikes and the 4-wheelers and they do some crazy things on there. They're climbing trees constantly. My son, I don't remember if I've mentioned this on the podcast at all, but recently my son was riding my 4-wheeler and was racing his brother, who was on the dirt bike. So the 5-year-old's on the dirt bike riding around, and then the oldest is on my 4-wheeler riding around, not paying the greatest attention. And it's one of those that you got to learn to look through your turns type of thing. Like, don't look at what you don't want to, like if you're trying to avoid a tree, don't look at the tree because you're going to drive right into the tree. So he took out 2 panels of fence, just ran into it, as like all these bruises on his chest from running into the handlebars. And I just happened to look up just right because I was mowing the lawn at the time, or I was weed whacking. So I look up and I see this fence over, and I see Adam like buckled over, holding his chest. I'm like, oh boy, what just, But it's one of those like, okay, well, what did we learn? He's like, yeah, I was going a little too fast. It hurt. And I'm like, yeah, it hurt a little bit. No, but now he gets back on it. He pays more attention, and it is what it is. It's not like I don't stop him from doing it just because he got hurt. And that was one of those things too, is like, that I've always tried to, like when Adam was riding the dirt bike, because it's a little 50cc dirt bike. So when he was like, 5 years old, like Rourke is, he crashed into a tree once and he was like, I don't want to stop. And I was like, no, we got to get back on. Like, you're not going to end with a crash, because now the next time you come out, that's where your brain is. So sure enough, he gets back on the dirt bike and starts riding that thing around the yard and having a great time with it. And it was like, okay, great job now. And then he was like, no, I don't want to stop now, because once he got back on and realized, okay, this isn't so bad, he doesn't want to stop. Life is going to throw that stuff at you no matter what. Like, life is going to punch you in the face. So it's, you might as well get ready for it when you're younger.
100%. Like we have a conversation with my girlfriend now, and it's kind of crazy, the parenting styles of what you grew up with and what she grew up with, and how you want to handle it. And her kids are young, and she's kind of been like, hey, have at it. I'm not like, take them as your kids, and it's been awesome. But I'm like, hey, just let him, like her son is the youngest, and he's 5 next week. But he's used to being babied. And I'm like, babe, you got to stop this. And so it's just like, rub a little dirt on it. And she seemed like, wow, this is different. Like, I don't need to run over them. He's fine. A minute later, he just wants that attention. Yeah. I think we talked, like the helicopter parent, the parents who are just running over to the kid on the soccer field. He's running onto the field when he's just like a simple ankle or something like that. Then that can be game in a minute. There's just no need for that. I feel like we don't want to raise kids that way, and we can make them learn so much more if they can just figure that out for themselves and learn what their limits are. I think that makes a huge difference when they're young.
Yeah, completely agreed. And I think that, and this is a slight generalization, but I think that's generally like the difference between moms and dads as well, right? There's a balance between there. Is the mom's usually the more protective in the I don't want them to get hurt, where the dad's the more protective in the I want to keep them safe, right? Which is different. Not wanting them to get hurt is very different than wanting to keep them safe, because you could be hurt and still be safe, right? So.
Sure.
And so it's a matter of like how do we balance those two, and you already alluded to it. One thing I talk about constantly is the ability to communicate between the mom and the dad, the husband and the wife. Like if you can't communicate back and forth between each other, then you guys are always going to be on different paths because you haven't discussed what path you're supposed to be on. Like whether it's the overreacting or whether it's the whatever. And you don't want it to be an argument between the two. You want to realize that there's a balance. Like when there's a time that they're hurt, like they're legitimately injured. Okay, like we jump in and we go. But if they're just hurt, like they twisted their ankle, they'll be fine. Like they'll get back up. They'll keep going. Like it's part of the process of growing up. And it makes us a little bit more resilient as we grow up too, which it seems to be a problem in society today. Resilience is not like victimization is good. Resilience is not, and that baffles my mind. Like I don't understand why we all want to be a victim, but nobody wants to be resilient. But I don't know. It's a weird society we're in right now.
Yeah, no one's going to do it but yourself. Like you got to figure out a way to push through, and you're not going to have these crutches to lean on as you get older. So yeah, I think it's great conversations to have with your kids and building that resiliency. Works.
So speaking of resiliency, I can't leave the resiliency conversation without talking about the mortgage world at the moment, right? Your world and what you're dealing with, right? So let's kind of fast forward. How did you get into the mortgage business? How did you kind of lead down that path?
Yeah. So I went to Penn State and graduated a little after 9/11 with a finance degree. And coming out, I did okay in school. I'm not the greatest student, but came out and to put a couple sentences together and get in front of some recruiters, and got offers from like the big wirehouses and things like that. I'm like, cool, just bring a list of your friends and family and we're going to call them and ask them for money and to invest with you. And I'm like, oh, that sounds horrible. I ended up falling into this local mortgage company, this chop shop up the street, right as rates were coming down. They were hitting like 6.5 at that point. And went with them, and it was crazy. We rode that all the way down into like the low 3s, which was crazy. We'd never thought we'd see that again until a couple years ago. But so it was in there, and I was getting paid $250 a loan. And it's crazy to be compared to now owning a brokerage and what that is. And in the fourth month, I set a company record. It was just a call center type thing. And I made $10,000. I thought I was rich. I was like, I'm going to retire now. This is $10,000. This is crazy. And so we ran through the ups and downs of that, and of my own shop a couple years ago after going through the meltdown and all the craziness of being with a couple different lenders, and always kind of running my own branch of a bigger company. Eventually just pulled the trigger and opened my own shop a couple years back and hit that right before COVID. And it's been awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs, it seems, inside of your tenure, right? I mean, if you're talking like back in the early 2000s, starting this process, what sort of things did you see on these? I mean, there's a lot of people listening right now that probably haven't done much. Maybe they went through like 08, maybe if they were really investing back then or had a business back then, but probably not, right? So, like, how did you kind of look at it from an employee perspective and then apply that now to as the broker / owner perspective? Like, what did you learn through those ups and downs that you're now applying in your business?
Yeah, you just got to be able to pivot. When I first started, all my relationships were with financial advisors and accountants, CPAs, because we were riding the refinance wave down. So we were going from 6%, then refinancing. I think I refinanced my in-laws 3 times at that point, from 6 and then at 5. And then I think I got them down at 3% at one point. And then that went away, and rates started coming back up. So I had to switch to then learning to purchase business. So then all my relationships moved over from, while still maintaining those relationships, you've got to find another source. So then I started going after realtors, and that was my source of business. When I really went out on my own, I still kind of rode the people feeding you beats for early in my career. But once I really went out on my own, and had own branches of bigger companies. I bet those relationships were important. And yeah, you just had to be kind of comfortable. At one point, I even thought I was going to get my real estate license when things were really slow. I sat for my real estate license or training, never pulled the trigger on it, but I was like, okay, let's get into full-time investing and things like that. But then rates started coming back a little bit. I was like, nah, I can do much better in mortgages and have the real estate on the side. And that worked out well.
Okay. And when was that you were talking about doing that?
So that was probably 2010.
Okay.
After the meltdown, I thought I was going to become like a full-time real estate investor. And
yeah.
So then mortgages started coming back. I kind of found that another niche. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Let's just focus. That's the main thing. And there's a lot of money to be made in mortgages, and I'm glad I stayed.
Yeah, and I think that it goes to the thought process of, you mentioned pivoting, but it wasn't necessarily pivoting out of what your core focus is. You still had a core focus. You just pivoted how you executed within that core focus. So you didn't have to go learn a whole new thing and all this stuff. And that's where, there were so many people for 2017 to 2000, like now. They were always saying or maybe it's starting to change a little bit now. I think I'm seeing the winds change a little bit now, but quit your W-2. I can't believe you have a W-2, quit your W-2 and go do all of these investing things and jump ship and do all this stuff. And it was dude, that may work for some people, but it doesn't mean that that's for everybody, right? People have to understand what their situation is, what they want to do, what their focus is, and how they're going to execute their personal life, right? Not just take a cookie cutter approach to all of it. And it, how did you prevent yourself from getting that distraction? Because that was a great time to start getting into real estate. 2010 would have been a wonderful time to get into real estate. So how did you kind of keep yourself away from that shiny object and stay focused on the path that you were on to now become as prosperous as you are in your business?
It's fun. I think the wave came back pretty quick. I was probably just keeping my head above water in the mortgage business when I was working for someone else. And then it came back. Right. I think at that time I switched companies and was able to get a bigger piece of the pie. So I didn't have to get more deals. I was just getting more piece or a bigger piece. So that helped kind of predict. But then I did have probably a handful of properties at that time, which were going well. So that's why it was alluring, thinking that I could maybe do that full time. But I'm glad I stayed. And I think those relationships kicked in, and the realtors started sending me business repeatedly after I had a proven track record. And I think it worked.
No.
Did I lose you?
I lost you there for a minute. Okay, I got you back. Yeah. So I think I that very end, I kind of missed a little bit, but I think you said that once you had the proven track record, and then what did you say right after that?
Yeah. Because the realtors, there's at the time, there's so many
internet
mortgage guys in there that just everyone's knocking down their door trying to get in with them. So once you can get a couple deals in with them, show them you're different than the rest and not just an order taker and a business owner, I think it makes a big difference for them.
Internet's eating you up today, Dennis.
All right.
Okay, I got you.
That out.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Perfect timing for it to come right back in.
I got it. Yeah. I got my bars here. I'm not sure what's happening. Apologize.
Tell your team to get off of Netflix, Jeez. We're watching Netflix at work. Goodness gracious.
So I sit in a couple of Keller Williams offices. So that's not the issue because none of these agents come to work in this.
That's interesting. Interesting. Yeah. They don't come to work in the summer. That's an interesting gig.
Post-COVID, no one's in the office. It's crazy at these real estate offices.
I'm surprised because the way the Keller Williams is, they're very, team and rah-rah together. From everything I understand of Keller Williams, I'm surprised that they didn't make that hey, you're back to it again. That's interesting. I wonder what the concept is behind that, just because that seems to be against the way I understand KW to be.
Yeah, no, we have, so it's Keller Williams Bluebell is one of the offices that I sit in. And it's one of the bigger offices in this market. Mike McCarthy is actually, Mike McCarthy bought it owns always up here.
Okay.
So yeah, it's one of his biggest ones. And yeah, it's strange. It's just after COVID, no one's come back. Still a lot of big teams in here, but they just have their maybe weekly meeting and then they're back out doing their thing. So it's just a lot of the admins in the office.
Yeah. So is that pretty common for mortgage brokers to kind of find their way to sit down into a real estate agent's office, or is that kind of a unique scenario that you're in?
Yeah, it's funny how I got in here through our friends through GoBundant. It's a crazy story. But there's 50-50. There's some of them try to get in here. For me, my thought process was, I'm a more face-to-face guy.
Yep.
Even though no one's here anymore. Instead of trying to call everyone on the phone, if I can build the relationships one-on-one, I thought that was my better end, and it's worked out great. Yeah, got one of these guys that becomes personal friends of mine. So, yeah, I think it was the right call.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that makes super wise sense to be able to do that. So I think you said right around COVID is when you started doing your own brokerage. Is that right?
Yeah, right before COVID. So it was crazy. I had gotten divorced and was having a lot of fun. Or after I got through it mentally, having a lot of fun out in the dating world and probably partying a little bit too hard, just being out there. And I got into, how did I quote off? So again, this whole connection thing of GoBundance and how I ended up here. Bob Wells had invited me. So I met Bob Wells. He was a big Keller Williams guy. And I sat through one of his classes when I first was introduced to those guys we did a tour of the Eagle Stadium, and Bob was sitting next to me, and he invited me to sit into one of his financial mastery classes that he teaches to a lot of the agents. So I was like, sure, there'll be agents there. This would be great. So during that, he says to me, in that class, he does this thing where I offer you $20 and all I want is $1 back. Would you do it? And I was like, of course. So he said, well, someone do it. And someone runs him up $1 and he gives him 20. He's like, well, if I can do the same thing in your business or in your personal life, do you think, and guarantee that kind of return, would you do it? And I was like, of course. So he's like, okay, well, I need you to sign up for Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny, or that was UPW. So I did UPW, and that was a game changer for me. Had been thinking about starting the business and going out on my own. I had the initial steps in there, but after that, I just came out, got my whole head around the divorce. Like, okay, just rein this back in, refocus here. And just it was gangbusters after that. So that was right before, that was probably 2 years before COVID. And I did business mastery, and the business was fully up and running, probably a year before COVID. And then COVID hit, and obviously we all know what happened with rates and everything. That was just awesome.
Yeah. And so did you find that the experience you had in the previous refinance boom that was going on helped you a lot when COVID came around? Because that was another refinance boom that came through strong.
I'd never seen anything like this. Yeah. There was just this COVID refinance wave was great. I was just at my desk, just going, just flooding, because my mom would come home, or my mom would come to the house and help with the kids. When it was my day, I just helped, I just shit bin, and she's like, nice to see you. Are you going to come out for air? I say, Mom, I can't. I'm just work. It was crazy. I mean, just banged it out, and had some big numbers that I never thought would be possible. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was one of those things though that I really want to get your take on it from your perspective, sitting in there. So I was a part owner, I guess you could say, of a mortgage branch for a short time. And it was through all of that boom, it was really nice. But it seemed as though it was, if all you knew was refinancing and you didn't know how to build those relationships afterwards, once that refinance thing happened, I mean, the amount of mortgage companies that went under and the amount of mortgage officers that were, figuring out how they used to become baggers at Walmart was insane. So it was how did you kind of work through that? What sort of skills did you already stack to prepare yourself to realize that, hey, this is only temporary, like in order to keep this afloat after this temporary situation, these are the things I have to do. What sort of skills did you stack to be able to do that?
Yeah, no, you had to have all the plates spinning because you can't let your relationships go with your realtors because this is a wave and this is going to go away. So it was cool. It's not only doing the refinance, but all those other guys were not calling their realtors. So you could get realtors on the phone because they're like, hey, we can't get a mortgage guy on the phone these days. They're so busy refinancing. They're not calling us back. So so you wanted to make sure that you're checking with them and having, I think we did some fun like tequila tasting events, like virtually. We sent everyone some tequila and did some virtual tastings that way. Just like different events just to stay top of mind with them. But you had to keep going and make sure you had all those balls in the air at the same time and not let those relationships drop because that's the bread and butter. And this refi, which is a lot of icing on top or cake. But that was pretty fun for a while. But the purchase business is the main business that we know. Okay. We got to stay in front of.
Yeah. And that's one of those that, again, knowing your focus on what you're doing in your business and saying, hey, this is what our business is about, and not get lost in the shiny object, because the shiny objects seem to be refinances. And I mean, you could make a lot of money off of it, but I mean, that's only going to last so long, right? So keeping that cool focus on
that, because I feel like I've done maybe one or two in the last year, so I'm waiting for that to come back. That we can add some more properties. We would rather money coming in, but
for sure.
It's great when it's there, and you never want it to be 90-10 one way. If it's like 70 or 60-40 is a normal market of where you should be. So because then those financial advisor relationships you're still want to stay in front of, and the CPAs we always try to stay in front of those guys as well. Just our events and things that we like to do. So you never, like, this has just been crazy where we're 90-95% purchase the last couple of years. So those relationships are rock solid, but we could use a little breather here, and hopefully next year he's had it refinance these people, because I've been telling him, hey, we're going to call you in a year. That year seems to be stretched out.
Well, here's the year, but I'll call you again next year because we're still not there yet, right? So but I mean, that's part of having those systems in place to know that this is what you have to do. It's like, that's just part of the process, is knowing that the system's set up, knowing that you're going to be calling, knowing that, having that trust with your people to know that you're actually there. You're looking at all the stuff. They are top of mind still, knowing that the customer feels like they're still top of mind and that you're top of mind on theirs as well. Because like, the amount of, especially in the mortgage world, the amount of mail I get at my house. Oh, we see that you have this and we could refinance you and get all. I'm like, goodness gracious. So like, that relationship is super important to know that, okay, thank you, shred it, and I'll call my guy,
Those Rocket Mortgage, their marketing database and their budget is unbelievable. That's why their rates are that high. But that's I think. They're pretty good.
I used Rocket Mortgage once for a second home / investment property, and it was a dreadful experience. Like we had to like push our closing date like 3 times. Like, it was like yanking teeth to try to get, and it was like every time we'd get ready to go to the closing table, they'd find one more thing that they had a question about. And it was like, you guys have a process to go through all of this stuff, right? Because like, I totally emailed that to you 3 months ago. I don't understand what's happening. And it was just, it was dreadful. I hated every second of it. So
it's going to give us a bad. Obviously, there's great guys in there too, but
yes, of course,
they're going to roll the dice of who's going to be on the other end of that 800 number. And if they don't have the business owner mentality that kind of we do in the pride, and there's just no accountability. That's right. So like, the people were calling, I'm like, hey, listen, you call me, your agent knows where my office is. I'm accountable to him. If this loan doesn't close, I'm not going to get his bit. So it's just a tight circle that we work in, and it seems to work very well.
That's where I like the smaller side of that sort of relationship, because it is a relationship business, not a transactional business. But for some reason, a lot of buyers don't necessarily look at it as the relationship side of the house. They look at it as, what's my lowest rate I can get? And it's like, that's not, the lowest rate is not always the point. So how do you make sure that the people you're talking to aren't getting suckered into the lowest rate? Like, what sort of conversations do you have? What sort of relationship do you make sure that is staying alive to keep that business there, as opposed to somebody going, but the shiny thing over here says I can get 1/4 of a point off.
Yeah. Well, luckily for me as a broker, and we're a small shop, so I'm usually pretty competitive, and if I need to, I'll do what I can. Just maybe for the agents, are like, dude, just how can you get me this one? I don't want him going with Bank of America or something like that. So I'll do what I can to win it. But yeah, I think people actually think that I'm paying the realtor to send me bid. Like that is the
that's illegal.
Actually, I say illegal. Well, it's funny that people. For us, that's obviously illegal.
Yeah.
Realtors are allowed to pass commissions and things like that and referral fees. So people probably think that's happening, but we're not in anyone's pocket. They're not in our pockets. It doesn't work that way. So we just want to offer the best rate out there and the best service. And don't work banking hours. So if you need something at a Sunday at 8:00 because that offer is due, we're going to answer the phone. If I'm at my kid's soccer game, I'm going to get someone on my team to answer the phone and get that over to you. It's, we're at the closing table, things like that. It's just, the rate's the rate, but there's a lot of other things that go into it. And just to make that a stress-free process, because a couple bucks here and there in the grand scheme of things, isn't going to make a huge difference. But I think we usually don't lose our rate. It's hard.
Very good. Yeah. So you mentioned the kids in the soccer game. So what do your kids think about what you do? Like, how do they kind of process? What sort of involvement do you have them in what you do? How aware are they of what you do?
They're pretty aware. They love the real estate side of it. Two older ones are now getting into the finance side of it. And we have my son, my middle guy loves like being in business. He just had a watermelon stand with another bike in the neighborhood. They each made $100 in 3 hours. And I sent an email to my whole neighborhood, like on our Facebook page. I was like, thank you. Like people were just giving him, I'll keep the change. Here's a 10. I was like, geez, you guys are unbelievably, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that he's making that much. But they understand that you have to work for things. They know that I put in my time, but they also know that today when one needed to be at camp, one needed to be at swim practice, and the other needed to be at field hockey practice, all at 9:00. And their mom is a nurse and a nurse anesthetist, has a great job, but can't do that. That as a business owner, I have that flexibility amazing. And that resonates that I'm at all their stuff. Sometimes their mom can't be there. And so I think the business owner thing is something that I kind of put in their heads and, hey, go get a normal job if you need to, but starting out, as soon as you can, figure out the way to make that passive income and get control of your time and work for yourself. So, I think that's the piece that sticks with them the most. My middle guy says he'd love to take over the mortgage business, and they just pick which houses that they want. Like, no, Dad, I want this house and I want this house. Like, okay, they're all yours someday, but for now, they're mine. And they understand that if I need them to come help me clean out, and it's gross sometimes, and normally I have my guys do that, but we're in there every once in a while just to keep them accountable. We're like, hey, this isn't just easy. We got to go clean this house out or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it kind of shows that there is a lot that goes into it, right? I mean, showing the work ethic that is needed to kind of go through all of this stuff, right? So, if my math is correct, like your two oldest were like 7 and 10, or so when you did open your own brokerage, right? So they were semi-old enough to kind of see what it was like when you were working for somebody else. Can they tell a difference between you working for somebody else versus you owning your own brokerage, or not really?
No, because I own net branch, probably kind of what you were running, like you mentioned. So I own net branches of other companies. So I just got paid off for P&L. I never reported anymore. I just didn't. I had to give a piece to the higher up. So I always, in their eyes, I owned the business. They didn't really know that my name was on the sign and everything. They probably didn't really know the difference. Until just recently, where, hey, this is, I don't even know if I told them. Like, I just said, I opened another company and they got some shorts out of it. And they really realized that it was what the difference was before. But that they're into it. They love the real estate. I had them, I taught her, have her listening to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And now at 15, I think she can grasp that. And I think it's going to be a good segue for because she's going to see me as the business owner and some of the stuff. And while her mom is a nurse anesthetist and does well financially, I think she'll kind of be able to kind of use that as like, okay, this is the difference. I like this about that job. I don't like this. And I think that's going to be a great intro to kind of start thinking ahead for her.
So the what conversations do you have? Like if your oldest is like reading Rich Dad Poor Dad now, do you have conversations about it, or is it just like, hey, let me know if you have questions? Like what's the intentionality behind that?
It's in the summer reading list because she just turned 15 and I mentioned it to her. So we haven't bridged it yet. Okay. But I think I'm going to listen. We'll go chapter by chapter and I'll listen to it at the gym to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
And then I had the girlfriend listen to it because she's big pharma and always, that's a thing, W-2, and she would crush it on her own. Like she runs a huge brand and would be great at marketing on her own. That's just too big for her mind to wrap around right now. And she's kind of got the golden handcuffs in it, but she's on board like buying properties with me and things like that. So for my daughter, that's kind of the plan, is to kind of read along with her and then trying to talk to a 15-year-old while she's great. I had to choose my days. Make sure she's in the mood to sit with it. But I think she's going to be really open to that, and that kind of open her eyes to, all right, this is how we do it, and this is how we kind of put the pieces together to build kind of the base and then build upon that.
Yeah. How did you approach the conversations with the real estate side of the house? I mean, if both of them are interested, that's lovely, right? But it doesn't always work out that well. So how did you kind of get those, especially your two older ones, to be on board with going into the real estate and seeing all of it? And like, was there any pushback, or was it mostly they were already interested just by you exposing them to it?
Yeah, there's, besides they'll always give me a little, Dan, like, or what, like, but they just know that's like a little test to see and they know I'm not going to break, just like we talked about earlier. Yeah. So they're like, but then they just get right in line and they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
And my son has always had the mentality, the business, like we did the whole like Sedona to Grand Canyon and all, like Lake Powell, and finished in, we did Zion, and then we finished in Vegas, which was gross. I've all seen the most beautiful places in the earth, and then we see Vegas. But I forget what hotel we were at, but they had a huge lazy river, and they charged an exorbitant. We were reading in the things like before we went down. They charged like whatever $75 or some crazy number to rent the tube to go in the lazy river, and we went to, there was a convenience store across the street, and we bought the tubes ahead of time. And I took them over, and my son's like, "Hey, Dad, do you think if I bought extra tubes, I could sell it to people at the lazy river?" And that was his own idea, and he sold that. And you should have seen him coming. Like he would stand a little outside where you buy the tubes, and was selling people, and then they could get them and filled there for a couple. And he would come back like, "Got another one," and he would just be so excited. So like he has that entrepreneurial mindset in him. So I just gotta stoke that flame and continue to have him work on that, and just like the lemonade thing. So it doesn't take, there's not much of a conversation. I do the numbers with them a little bit, and like, hey, this is what the rents are, this is what my expenses are, so they can kind of see a P&L and kind of start putting that together. But yes, as far as just sitting down and really, like, I kind of do it on the fly. It's not like, hey, let's go break down an hour of this and get into a P&L or something like that. We just kind of have those conversations when we have time in the car.
Yeah. Okay. See, I wish that, so I don't know, I hear that a lot from entrepreneurs, like, oh, I've been entrepreneurial since I was a kid, right? And then I hear that from some of the guys I'm talking to, where their kids like yours are already entrepreneurial. And I often wonder, like, I missed a boat somewhere, because I really wish that I would have known, like, some sort of, and I can't tell necessarily whether it's exposure, like some kids are just exposed to it in some way, shape, or form when they're younger, which is kind of how that spark gets fired up. Because for me, I wasn't exposed to anything entrepreneurial growing up. There was zero happening on that side. You know, I was exposed to a lot of military stuff because both of my parents were in the military. So what do you know? I joined the military. Like, shocking, right? So, so you know, for me, I'm always trying to kind of narrow in what it is, and like, is there a formula that I could put together for my kids to get them down a path that makes sense? You know, because but in the grand scheme of things, they all are going to choose their own path. Not everybody is, of course, set to be an entrepreneur and try to work through the struggles of running a business and having employees and hiring and firing and all of that stuff. Not everybody is down for that roller coaster of a ride. So what would you say you've kind of noticed since your middle, Wes, seems to be the one who is more that direction, even though your oldest still is interested? What kind of things do you think has happened as those two have been growing up that has led Wes to be more that direction versus your oldest, Samantha?
It's funny, like my daughter, well, she's now obviously 15-year-old girl. She wants the Lululemon, so she knows. So she's trying to figure out her ways of babysitting and things like that, of how she can make money. And that's newer for her because she's wants the clothes, and I'm not the one. I took her to the store the other day because her mom usually takes care of that stuff. But the makeup store, and I was like, holy cow, this is what $100. The bag that we left was like this much with a couple of things. And I was like, holy cow. So she knows that she's not going to be getting that stuff and she needs to work for it. So that's something that kind of was put in me. I was always a caddy when I was younger. And my dad had me out there 8th grade summer, bags on, and dying, going up the hilly course that we belong to. And then but my son, I don't know if it's nurture or nature, but it's, I think he sees how he does it. He likes to be around me. My mom, kind of being with him a lot, she says he tells her a lot of stuff and then she'll relay it back to me. That's maybe he doesn't think it, but he says he thinks what you do is great. And she just said, has all these great things to say that he's saying to her. And then she feeds them to me and it's like, don't you tell him what he said. But you can't break that confidence barrier or that trust barrier that she's not supposed to be saying. But yeah, it's funny when you were mentioning how when you growing up, you didn't have that. I was thinking back in my day of if I had that or not. And I remember the one thing where it was probably the first time I was ever little bartering. I went to Catholic school growing up, and the nuns would make you bring a place that you would eat at your desk in your classroom. There wasn't a cafeteria or anything. And you would have a cloth placemat that you were supposed to bring with your lunch, and you would put it down and you would have your lunch. And this guy next to me, Joe, always forgot it. He was always getting in trouble for forgetting his placemat. So I started bringing him an extra placemat and giving it to him for that. And I said, Joe, I'll give you this placemat. And after football practice once a week, there would be, or every day it would come, but I was like, once a week, you have to buy me an ice cream from the ice cream man that comes and sells. And I was like, I remember that now. I was like, that was probably my first entrepreneurial endeavor of a
solid barter
placemat for an ice cream cone from the ice cream man after football.
Yeah, that's a solid barter for sure. Yeah, I saw a buddy of mine, and a while back when I went to my 20th reunion, I saw him again. But he was always a business kid. In high school, he had his own business. He was installing people's stereo systems and all sorts of stuff. And I always thought it was cool because he had what appeared to be a nice car. He had money all the time. And I was like, what the heck is this kid doing that I'm not? But I never went down that. I never, asked the questions. I never chased it down. And then it wasn't until after multiple jobs in the military and I started doing what I'm doing now, where I'm like, well, I really like this kind of entrepreneur stuff and chasing things down and building and growing and trying to figure it all out. And I just, for me, it's kind of one of those classic, if I'd have known then what I know now type of situations. But, if you're not ready for it, then you're not going to know it then, right? You have to wait until you're ready for it. And here, it took me a while to get ready for it, but now I'm excited about it. And there's something else you were saying that kind of made me wonder, and this is more just what pops in my brain, and that's the beauty of where we're at, is I often wonder, and I ask dads all the time on this podcast, do you feel like you push too much? Are you afraid of pushing too much to your kids to where they run away from what you're trying to show them, as opposed to kind of running with and being excited about it? So I'm going to ask that question, and I'm going to tell you what popped in my brain. But what, how much balance do you have there in exposing them to the various different things that you're doing in the mortgage and real estate side of the house, versus forcing them to go down that path?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that because my daughter turned 15 a couple weeks ago, and I wrote her a long letter, just handwritten letter, and proud of her because she's awesome, a triple threat, great athlete, great in school, great personality. And one of the things I wrote in there, is that I push her as hard as I do because I know she can handle it.
Yeah.
And I specifically wrote in there that that's not just dad talk, because a lot of dads will say that to their kids, but maybe not down really believe it. Right? And you hear, so if their kids aren't whatever is great in school or something like that, they're just, you can do it. And maybe they have doubts in their mind that their kid can actually do it. But there is no doubt that for me, when I say that to my daughter, that the person that she is, that she can do whatever she wants business wise, like on the field or whatever it is, she can go as far as she wants to. And that's why I push her, and I want her working out in the summer, because as a sophomore, she's going to start on field hockey this year, and on track, she's going to do great. So, and then academically, she's 4 point something, which blows my mind. Like over 4.0 GPA. I'm like, I was not a good student. Where'd that come from? And she does it all on her. That's one thing, knock on wood, that somehow my kids, I do not get on them for homework. They just go and do it. I don't know if it's setting the standard early, but they just go do their thing. And I've been very, very blessed with how that's all worked out. And then the next one just sets the standard for the next one. Next one, and they know that after dinner, this is the routine. And I think that the structure and the routine really helped in my life. Because when we got divorced, they would come home and say, it's chaos at mom's house. And here we like the structure and routine, and we know what's next and what's next. I think that made a big difference. Well, we kind of found our routine after the divorce. And I apologize, I went on there a little far. I lost your second part of that question.
No.
The forcing. The forcing, again, I don't force too much. Like, I force things like for them to be good people and do well at school and try as hard as they can on and off the courts and fields. The forcing of my stuff down there, like I'll send them video clips and things like that of like Instagram reels there, like just motivational stuff. Yeah. And some of it will be business related to the older two who have phones. And then I'll share stuff with my youngest one, if we're kind of sitting next to, and I have them be listening to something. But I'm not really forcing my personal stuff just yet on them.
Okay. Yeah. It's, this is what was going on in my brain as we were kind of going through all of that is I want them to I want my kids to have a positive view of what I'm able to do. Right. So the last couple of days, my oldest two kids have been sick. They had like 103 fevers, not feeling great. You just wanted to be around dad. And I work from home, so it worked out well. I just told some folks, hey, I'm going to be with my kids the majority of the day. I'm still going to make some phone calls. Some of them, even if they're video calls, I'll probably have a kid on my chest. No big deal, right? Because, well, I own the business and I work from home, so this is the way it is, right? But at the same point, that they feel that and they see that I'm able to do some of these things, and I try to have those conversations. Like, this is like I work from home and I do business so that I can kind of have more time with you guys. But I fear that, so when they look at me, they think I'm working all the time. I'm at the computer all the time, but they don't realize that mommy's gone more than I am, right? Because mommy goes to work, like she's out of the house. So I've recently started to wonder, and I've been thinking that I want to buy an office space, like a small one, so I can have my own office and go somewhere a couple times a week just to kind of get out and have a little bit more focus than, I'm sure that there's been more than one time on this call that like you can hear the kids in the background, right? Because they're always there, and it's always part of life, which I absolutely love. But at the same point, I'm afraid that me being on this computer all the time and them watching me on the computer all the time might push them away from this type of work, because they're like, all I remember of my dad is he was on his computer all the time, instead of remembering all those times that I was able to just be with them when they were sick, or go have playtime in the backyard in the middle of the day when So I'm just I don't know. I'd love to just pass that over to you and get your thoughts on what your thoughts are on that conundrum in my brain.
Yeah, no, it's tough because you think you're doing a great job and you think you're putting in that time, and you'll ask the question, hey, do you think I'm around? And like, we'll have that conversation in the car. Mm-hmm. That's usually when we get our one-on-one time. Yeah, it's just in a car to sports or things like that, and you can capture them for a little bit. And yeah, it's just like a dagger to your heart sometimes. Yeah, no, you work a lot, and I think I've been cognizant of it, and like when they'll come in and like, hey, Dad, you want to throw football or something like that? And But if at like 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm like, oh, but I'd love to, but they think because I'm home, that means I'm not working. And I'm like, but it's like 3:30, but 5:00 we'll find some time today, but I just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
And you kind of see them like shrug and like walk away, and they're just like, oh my God, it just rips your heart out.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a balance there. And I kind of try to explain that, hey, listen, I got to work now if I'm going to come to your game later today. Or we kind of try to balance it that way. But it's tough, the work from home thing. They think, especially with me as a business, oh, Dad, but you own the business, you can do it. I'm like, I can, but I'm responsible for people to get, they want to buy their house next week and things like that. So I got to be around. And I think I'm very good at being balanced, but when you share that from them, you're just like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. It's painful. It hurts because it's like, man, like we realize as adults what's actually happening, but how do we relay that to the kids for them to understand? Because at a kid level, I'm not sure there's ever enough time with mom and dad, right? Like they just want to be around mom and dad all the time until, like, obviously when they could become teenagers, maybe that's not as true. But especially when they're younger, like they just like being around mom and dad is just like the best. Like I really just like being around you guys. So how do I explain that in a way that makes sense to a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old? And I haven't quite narrowed that down exactly the way I need to do it, but I do think that working from somewhere else a couple times a week is going to be at least helpful for them to kind of realize when I am home, man, I actually do get to see my dad. What do you know? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's painful.
Yeah, even more so for me, just having them 50-50 and like, I'm very limited. And then I struggle, it's better now because I am doing the board meetings and things like that and being one-on-one with them. But I would struggle with that a lot of having one-on-one time because I have limited time, then the other two would feel left out. And so that was always a big thing of like, how do I do this? But I think we're on a good routine now and doing the family boardroom stuff, that book we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a juggling act, but I think we're doing the best we can and raise some great kids.
Yeah, I love to hear it, and it's I think the family boardroom stuff is awesome. I've had them on my calendar for a while, and we've had like maybe one or two of them, and it's like I keep missing.
No,
like
the rules.
I know that's the hard part. It's like, oh my goodness, like I want to go back and read the book again and read it with my wife. Because it's like one thing happens here, or all of a sudden there's a golf match that day, or there's a whatever. And it's like I set them up in one way, like in the future, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart because of life. And it's like, no, like these are the things that we can't let fall apart. So, I don't know exactly how to nail that to the wall and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. But I do have to figure that out because I love the concepts, and I mean it's such a great thing for the kids to be able to see, and that dedication to them and know how important it is, and know how important they are to the whole family individually and as a team. So
yeah, and I'm teasing because mine has got a bit off track a little bit here in the summer, just with craziness.
Well, thanks for calling me up then, jeez.
It sucks. Got 100 countables, but I got to be honest on my end too. Like, where they actually just mentioned it the other day. I was like, who's up next in the boardroom? And so we got to think of something fun. But mine tough part is I don't know if you know Mark Schwager.
Yeah.
And he does some crazy stuff for his kids, big time trips. Yeah. And so I'm kind of like, okay, when do we like for my daughter's? I was like, okay, maybe we switch over to that because she's limited and maybe doesn't want as much time. So I'm thinking maybe we do one at a big trip, just a one-on-one with her this year.
Yeah,
so
they do awesome one-on-one trips it's phenomenal. And Frank Smallin, I don't know if you know him, he does the same thing now too because he picked that up. Like,
yeah, I'm in that daily sweat with all of his guys.
Oh no, yeah, I should jump on that Marco Polo thing, and because I'm getting chubby and I didn't knock that crap off. So, I trim my beard, but it would show off my chubbiness even more. So I don't want to. I gotta hide it. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I was just talking to my GoPod about that, about how I need to go through. So by Wednesday, my next GoPod call, I have to go in and completely empty my refrigerator and pantry of all that processed garbage that we don't need. Like it's just it's got to go because if it's there, I eat it, and that's my problem. as if it's like, I can't, like, well, it's there. Like, why shouldn't I eat it? You know, it's
100%.
and I'm so logical in almost everything in my life. So, I've done the, what you call it, CI, the, culture index for, so I've done that a couple times with the GoBundance stuff. Right. And, I am a 10 out of 10 on the logic side of the house. And when we first did that in the Florida regional, I'd asked, like, cause they were talking about it. Yeah. If you're like a 7 out of 10, like you're super logical, it's very like, you have a harder time. And I was like, what's like, I'm a 10 out of 10. What is that? And he's like, do you know who Spock is? And I was like, wait a second. I don't appreciate that, you know? But it leads me to not be emotional about much of anything. Like I don't have many emotions at all other than with my kids. Like or other kids, like if it's a kid thing or, like I get emotionally attached to that. Like back when I was an agent, any of the kid cases that we worked were very, like, those were difficult. Like whether it was a child pornography case or a child sex assault case or those types of things would be very difficult because that's where my emotions come in. But I mean, if you're talking about, chasing down spies or dealing with, murder stuff or like, I have zero emotion. I've got no issues with this. Like this isn't a problem. But you bring the kids in, it's tough. But my only place in my life where emotion I know is involved for sure, besides my family, is food. And I don't know why. Like I struggle so badly with the emotional attachment to food. And I've yet to figure out like the psychology behind it. Because I know all the logic. I know everything behind it about how terrible it is for me. But for some reason I pass a Taco Bell and I'm a little bit hungry. I'm like, cheesy gordita crunch sounds great. Like I don't get it. Like I don't know what it is.
I'm right there with you. I won't spend but I'm cheap that way, so I won't spend money and drive around like that. There had ice cream sandwiches down here. It's like ridiculous that one of the teams had it yesterday, and I crushed one yesterday with several other cookies, and I crushed one today, and I'm supposed to be training for my Misogi next month, and I've got to be better at that. But yeah, the good thing is the girlfriend moved in and she has a Dennis cabinet. So I don't have to go in the pantry anymore. We just have all healthy snacks for me in the pantry or in the Dennis cabinet. And that's so far so good.
Is it locked? Like, does it only open at certain times? Like, is it?
Because there's like, I don't know, like nuts and things like that. Healthy
okay, so the Dennis cabinet is the healthy stuff. That's nice. That's exactly. This is the one you go to for snacks. You can avoid the other one.
The pantry anymore. Yeah, I have to go to the pantry where all the kids' snacks are and all that deliciousness.
So I'm gonna have to get like a fingerprint lock set up on the cabinets where my fingerprint's the only one that's not on it. Like the kids can go open it and grab snacks, but before I know it, they're gonna be like, "Hey, Dad, if you give me $5, I'll." Okay, come on now. They're not helping it. It's ridiculous. So what's your Misogi that you said that you're doing next month?
Some guy, my friend invited me to this trail run, a half marathon trail run.
Ooh, nice.
And I didn't realize it's like the hardest course. It's not only we're just doing a nice flat track, it's the hardest track in Pennsylvania. I'm like, what the heck? So like, at some point we're going to be on all fours, like scaling this mountain.
Nice.
I was all set to do the Colin O'Brady 12-hour walk. And he's like, oh, why don't we do this? I'm like, well, that sounds like a horrible idea. Fine, sign me.
Well, let's do it. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. For those who don't know, can you explain what a Misogi is?
Yeah. So, a Misogi, what's his name? Gary, Gary Ritzler. Is that?
Oh, I don't remember the name of names. Okay.
But that, one of the big speakers. So a Misogi is, a goal that you have a 50-50 chance of completing. And it's supposed to be almost like a life-changing event. Obviously, half marathon's not going to change my life, but it's going to be a pretty cool thing to say, hey, I did this up and down this mountain, and it's for the month leading up to it, it's being in shape and feeling great. So, so whether it's in business, shouldn't really be too much in business. It's just more like whatever, like maybe a Kilimanjaro or the Colin O'Brady, the 12-hour walk. But he just had come out, and a couple guys did that where he's literally just walking for 12 hours, no iPad, no music, no nothing, no phone calls, just walk 12 hours, and get in your head. And I was like, oh, that seems a scary place to get into. Sorry. Maybe we'll save that for next year. But we'll see how it goes. Some people did like a fast is one of them. So there's all kinds, whatever you're into. But yeah, have you ever done anything? Or
I've never done one where I
to-do
called
list?
it a Musogi, right?
Okay.
But I've certainly done things in my life that have, 50-50 chances on those type of things. Like climbing Mount Fuji with my son on my back. That was a fun one, right? Climbing Mount Fuji is not necessarily an extremely difficult thing, but climbing Mount Fuji with a child on your back
Sure.
definitely adds some play to it. There are things that I've wanted to do that I wanted to add on to my list, that I haven't really narrowed in like the Musogi type of thing, because I really do want to do some of those things. I've lived a rather adventurous life with my military experiences and everything. So sometimes I'm like,
Sure.
I'd rather just go to a 4-star hotel than deal with climbing another 14er, right? So, I do love those adventure type of things, which is one of the reasons I love GoBundance, because I love doing like the adventure stuff right before we go and start doing the masterminding. And like something about climbing a 14er at 5:30 in the morning and then coming down at 2:00 in the afternoon and getting right into hey, tell me more about your business and how we can tell you how much you suck today. And it's like, oh man, this is exactly. There was, what was it? Which event was it? I think it was in Vermont at the beginning of the year. Where we there were a few of us that they had the IV thing, so like we're in masterminding with IVs like just added into our body with the drip hanging up there, right? So, is this your first Musogi, or have you done others?
This is my first time calling it a Musogi.
Yeah.
I climbed, trying to think of some challenging. I did Mount Washington, not crazy, but actually that's a trip that I would think I would do with my daughter next year. I was like, okay, let's do that for. It's not flying to Paris to go see a boy band or something like that. Somebody's up chance. But yeah, we get to start with a nice mountain hike up to Mount Washington in New Hampshire. So that's the tallest peak on this side of the country. So some people have died up there, and so I think it's hard.
Well, I mean, if people die doing it, people die crossing the street. So I guess that maybe not be it. It was a little bit better than a 50-50 shot of crossing the street without dying, but. I figure that I survived combat in Afghanistan and Iraq. I think I've maxed out my 50-50 chances. I'm going to go ahead and just enjoy my life for a little.
You gotta have the trump card every single time.
Yeah, there were some mountains that we were hiking in Afghanistan that was like, I was a dog handler back when I was in Afghanistan. So I was attached to a special operations team, the special forces group. And, we get helicopter inserted into various different places and, go do whatever mission we had going on. Or we would go drive around as like a response force and just kind of see what trouble we can get into type of thing. And there was one time we were driving around and we looked up and it appeared to be that there was like like an anti-aircraft gun at the roof or at the top of this peak of this mountain. So we were all kind of like, oh, well, guess it's time to go up there. And I've got my dog, and I'm the only I'm one of 2 Air Force guys that are attached. One of the guys is a combat controller, so he calls in airstrikes and sets up austere airfields and all sorts of stuff. So he's a special operations guy. I am not a special operations guy. I just happen to get attached to them. So I'm sitting here climbing this mountain, like with all of my kit on. I've got my dog attached to my kit, and like he was going nuts. My dog just wanted to run free, and we're at like, I don't know, 12,000 feet. 13,000 feet, something like that. So I unhook him and, just put my leash on, and my dog's just going up and down, and we're all hoofing and climbing up this mountain, and we get to the top, and it was just this oddly shaped rock that looked like a big barrel stiff gun. So we get all the way to the top, we're all exhausted, like, man. My dog is like, we got to do this again. Like, he's stoked, like, yes, like he thinks this is the best thing in the world. And we get to the top and it was nothing. We're like, what the heck was that? So, hook the dog back on and hike our way back down to our gun trucks, hop back in and keep on driving, I was like, oh my goodness, that was exhausting. But it was a good hike. We had fun. Get to wear my boots in a little bit more,
Wow. But I'd love to hear more about that.
Boy, a life that I hope my kids never have to learn, right? So,
you think they'll go that way at all, or not pushing them at all?
I am for sure not pushing them that direction. Yeah. I don't know how deep I want to go down on this path because I've gone through a lot in my brain. I have struggled, especially recently, to realize whether or not I had a positive effect in all of the things that I've done in my career. So I went through, like I said, I was in Iraq for a while. I was in Iraq for like 8 months with the Army. Kicking indoors, doing all sorts of stuff with a dog, trying to go find bombs, and And then what do you know? Like Iraq falls apart after we leave, and we don't do anything to keep it upright. Go to Afghanistan, do the same thing again with special operations teams. This time, helicopter inserting into people's front yards and doing some crazy stuff, just to watch what happened in Afghanistan and watch it completely just fall apart, and like heartbreaking. I mean, unbelievably heartbreaking things to watch after going through all the stuff that we go through over there. And then I was in Niger for a while, trying to help with a lot of stuff going on in Niger, and then that falls apart to a coup, and they're trying to kick that. And it's like, what good was I doing in places? Like, it feels good at the moment because like my purpose was to do good, but was the overall purpose to do good? And I still, it's something that I've been working through mentally for a while, and I don't know the answer to that. And so I would not encourage my kids at this point. Like, I mean, the overall goal may have been good. I don't know. I just know that for the last couple of years, with all of that stuff that has happened, has made it difficult for me. So, so it's not something and not to mention, like, the military has gone so woke recently that I can't be down with, like, I mean, I was going through some officer training, and they were talking about, a lot of the DEI type of stuff. It was kind of before the term DEI was really getting pushed around, and they were like, basically, if this person is of a specific race, sex, whatever, that they should be promoted over somebody else. And I said, no, like, the person who has the best record, like, we are a military fighting force. Our job is to be the best fighting machine in the entire world. So we should not care. Like, I mean, if it is a gay purple person, I don't, like, if they are the best person for the job, I truly do not care. I don't care. Like, they should be hired if they're the best person for the job. If it is a straight white male, then they should be hired for the person. Like, and it boggled my mind that we would be looking at promoting folks based off of anything other than the absolute best person for the job. And that's when I really started to see it. And I was like, I was fighting back like crazy. And I would call some of my good friends who, they're ages with me, and they were Black, and I would call them up. And it's like, this is what I'm being told. And like, one girl in particular, she was like, that is dumb. Are you kidding? I was like, I needed to ask somebody that to make, like, I know I've got biases. I know I do. Like, everybody does. But I was like, I need to hear from you. Like, you're a Black female in the same job I'm in. Let's sit down and go have some coffee. So we did. We sat down and had some coffee. And I was like, I need to, like, understand what is going on, like, because this seems so out of the ordinary for me. And she'd already been in for like 20 years as well. So it was like, she was of the same mindset. She's like, no, like, the best person for the job. Like, if somebody's passing me up, because I'm going to assume that it's because I'm not the best person for the job. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a Black female. And I was like, okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing something here, because clearly I've got it, but, so that's all of that on top of each other. That's one of the reasons I would say, couple of the many reasons that I'm not so sure at the moment.
Yeah. And your family from your dad, but I'm flipping the podcast on you now. And your dad being on being the military as well. It's he doesn't care. Like, he's happy the way everything turned out. And
so, yeah, I mean, both of my parents were Air Force, and they, my dad first joined when Carter was in, and then, Reagan came in after he'd been in for a little bit. So, he had a different view. Like, from Carter to Reagan, he understood the military very differently. And then he got booted when Clinton came in, because he had broke his back and he wasn't worldwide qualified anymore. So he got removed when Clinton came and just destroyed the military at the beginning of his tenure, right? Because he shut down tons of bases, and it was kind of rough for a lot of people got booted, and a lot of bases got shut down. So I should actually sit down and kind of have a conversation with him about because he left on kind of a bitter taste, right? Like, he had been in for 15 or 16 years when he got booted, and he got no retirement. He got no nothing. Like, it was just, here's a check and you're gone. So I'm curious. I should talk to him a little bit about that and because he clearly left a bitter taste, but allowed me to go, and was encouraging for me to go.
Okay.
But he lived a very dreadful life growing up before he joined the military. So the military kind of straightened him out and helped him get on a right track. So he probably has a different view altogether anyways. So, but my wife has a different kind of understanding. She's still in the military. She's got another year left. Unless she makes colonel, then we might stay in for a little longer. But, she's got a slightly different perspective on some things as well, as she's still, doing her thing. But So all in all, boy, we talked like 15 minutes about that one question about whether or not I would recommend my kids to join. And I don't know. Right now, I lean towards probably not. But if they choose to, great. I want it to be one of their options. One thing that I didn't realize I had options other than the military. So as long as my kids know that they have multiple options in front of them and they're not getting pigeonholed into one or the other, then I'm fine with whatever decision they make. But I'm not going to encourage or discourage one way or another.
Yeah. No, I've said it is all about options, and you do the right things now so you have options in the future. So yeah, that's cool.
I mean,
yeah, they will have a lot.
I sure hope that they have a lot of options, and that secretly I hope they don't choose that route. But at the same point, as we're talking about this, the RNC is going on, the Republican National Convention is going on, and this is the first one I've actually listened to and watched. Like I've listened to and watched some of the DNCs before, but this is actually the first time I've actually listened to and watched some of the RNC. And it kind of gives you a different flavor as well of like, okay, what various options and things that are out there and all this stuff. And it really does, again, come down to what kind of options can my kids have and what sort of freedoms can my kids have. I see everything, like they've brought on all sorts of different folks from all sorts of different walks of life onto the stage. And none of them are the right answer and none of them are the wrong answer. So in the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, I just need to give the most opportunity to my kids that I can. And whether they're on the stage because they're one of the people that the RNC decided to bring in, or whether they're on the stage because they're one of the politicians that are there, whatever, I don't know. I have no clue. I just want to expose them to as much as possible so that they make good decisions.
Yeah.
And pray to God. Yeah. So honestly, I've recently been thinking about it more and more because but then I start talking about stuff that I've just been talking about, and I'm like, am I going to be I don't know if I want to be a part of that cesspool.
Yeah.
It's dreadful.
It gets a little loose. The mouth gets a little loose and I get in trouble.
If that's the case, then that's the case, right? But as long as I know that I'm speaking my mind, and that was the thing towards the end of my military tenure was, I needed to know that the things that were coming out of my mouth were what I thought were true and factual, and I was doing the best that I could for my people. And whether somebody agreed with that or not, then it is what it is. But I need to know that at the end of the night, when I put my head on the pillow, that I've done everything that I think is the best route to go.
You can't lie about Santa. You can't lie about Santa. How are you going to lie about it? You can't keep the mouth shut about some other stuff.
You're not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Valid point, sir. Man, oh man. All right. So, boy, after all that, I don't even know where to go. So what has been your favorite part about running a business while being a dad?
I think we touched on it earlier. Just being available, like being there. And actually it's unbelievable. Right? When you go to, I don't know how these people do it, and credit to them and credit to their bosses, I guess, but like you go to something like every school event now, whether it's a Christmas concert or whatever it is, like all these things are packed. I'm like, how do these people working 9 to 5s, like, how do they get there? Like, what are their bosses are leaving? Like my ex, she can't, like she works in an operating room. She can't get out of there. And I feel bad for the kids whose mom, like they're looking for mom and dad in the audience and they're not there. And for me to have my kids light up when we make eye contact at the Christmas concert or on the field or something like that, just to have that flexibility, no matter how much money I make, that I'm able to be there, is probably the best. Like whatever, mortgages isn't the sexiest job in the world. I do well on it and allows me to invest in other things and do things, but the flexibility that it gives me as a business owner, I think is the most important thing in that background of stuff.
Yeah, sexy things tend to be the things that also go away kind of quickly too. So I think sticking to something that is a solid, always needed type of job is I think you're better off that way than chasing something sexy. So
and the boring job next door or the millionaire next door.
That's right. That's right. Well, I as we're getting kind of wrapping up here, I want to pass it over to you to see if there anything that we wanted to cover while we were on the call that we haven't yet, or is there anything that you really wanted to just kind of express while we're chatting?
For me, I think the dads, maybe a shout out to the single dads out there that are doing the we work for sometimes too. And it's crazy that the circles that I got into after becoming divorced, and actually shout out to the moms out there too that had the bad husbands who are disappeared and doing double duty and being the dad. So I thought it's crazy kind of it's being out there and dating and just getting a circle of friends who are single, kind of the stories you hear. But man, for those guys, things like where I was 8-9 years ago and how I thought my life was like all over, and how I just poured myself into my kids, and that became the priority. And to see my, like, they're like, oh, you're going to get married again? I'm like, no, never. And just to see the full circle things. And now I've gone from 3 to 5 kids and happy to call those kids my own. And that's the way we've talked about it, is that, hey, I'm going to raise these as my own and call them my kids. I think there's something to be said for those guys, just to keep your heads up, and things do work out much better, because I was in a bad spot years ago. Where I'm just so grateful how things turned out.
So I think that there's a couple things I want to emphasize there. Is one, yes, definitely, hats off to the single parents. I mean, it's not an easy thing to have to go through all of that. But the other thing I'll say is that hats off to you for setting yourself up that allows you to be a successful single dad, that that you can do the things that you're doing, because you've set yourself up in the right way. This is one of the reasons I love talking to business owners, like entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out all this balance. Is while there is a ton of stress that comes along with owning your own business and doing all this stuff, that the ability that you have to kind of put things on in a process and be able to spend the time where you need to, and be able to adjust fire. Like if let's say, you and I, I'm sure, have both heard multiple stories about, some kid gets sick and then their dad just can't get off of work. Their mom just can't get off of work. They're really trying, or one of them's got to quit. And then all of a sudden the finances, all the stuff. And it's like, yes, this is why we do what we do as well, and running a business and putting in the systems, and why it's so important to make sure that you have a good team around you, is because now we can just step away and be like, hey, you know what? I need this week to go away and do something. I need this to do X, Y, and Z. So, you've set yourself up well to be able to have a good team around you and be able to do those things. And even if we don't feel like it sometimes, like I chatted about it already. I don't remember if it was pre-recording or when we started, but being able to just spend a day with my kids being sick, both of them just wanting to be near daddy while they had 103 fever. Lucky me. It's a blessing to be able to have that sort of flexibility. So good on you for setting yourself up to be able to do that, and stay an involved dad and keep yourself in the fight. So, well, Dennis, thank you so very much for jumping on. It was awesome to chat with you. Hopefully none of the technical difficulties that we had in the middle there screwed anything up too awfully bad, but thankfully Mary, as my assistant's pretty awesome, so she'll get us straightened out. But if people wanted to reach out to you, get a hold of you, if they're in your area or whatnot, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Just find me on Facebook, posting stuff with my kids, and I don't use it too much for business. So it's a public page, so you can find me at Dennis Callan, JR, whatever the Facebook one is. So it's super easy. I think Instagram is the same handle, Dennis Callan, JR. And check me out, and our family run around doing fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dennis, for reaching out. We'll have those links in the show notes. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, leave comments, have some banter back and forth. Tell me where I failed miserably in my communication. Tell me what you liked, what you disliked, all the stuff. Let's have some conversation in the chat if we can. But thank you all very much. Thank you again, Dennis, and we'll see everybody on the next show.
Adam, thanks so much, man.